In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless alien species thrived on distant worlds, the notion of humanity being the deadliest species was a concept no one ever dared to entertain. Among the myriad of sentient beings, some had mastered the art of war, others had achieved scientific enlightenment, while a few even controlled entire star systems. The Galactic Council, an alliance of the most powerful and advanced species, ruled over them all with a firm but fair hand. Yet, the existence of a seemingly insignificant species from a primitive, barely developed planet, Earth, was not even a consideration in their grand calculations. But as history would show, underestimating humanity was a grave mistake. It all began when the first human expedition ventured beyond their solar system. The year was 2450, and humanity had spent centuries mastering space travel and advancing technologically. They had learned to harness the power of the stars, developed interstellar ships that could travel at near-light speeds, and built artificial intelligence that rivaled the most advanced minds in the galaxy. But despite their advancements, they still lacked one key thing that the galaxy's most powerful species had in abundance: unity. Humanity was fractured, with nations, ideologies, and religions often in conflict. Their societies were a complex tapestry of different cultures, beliefs, and values, which frequently caused division. The aliens, however, viewed this as a weakness, a trait that would prevent humans from ever becoming a serious threat. They were fragmented, divided among themselves, and without the cohesion that defined the truly powerful species of the galaxy. But the human spirit was far more resilient than anyone realized. The core of humanity was a drive to survive, to adapt, and to overcome. It wasn't just their technology or their intellect that made them dangerous. It was their unparalleled ability to learn, innovate, and evolve in response to challenges. Every alien species that encountered humanity was about to learn just how deadly this drive could be. The first contact came with the Varkar, a species known for their brutal conquest of nearby star systems. The Varkar had long since subjugated several advanced civilizations, their military prowess unmatched in the galaxy. When a Varkar fleet encountered the human vessel Elysium, their commanders dismissed it as just another insignificant speck in the cosmic sea. They had conquered hundreds of species far older and more advanced than humanity. To them, the humans were nothing more than a nuisance, an afterthought in the grand scheme of galactic power. The Varkar warlords issued a simple demand: surrender or face annihilation. What they didn't anticipate was the resilience of the humans they encountered. The Elysium was a state-of-the-art warship, but it wasn't just the technology that allowed it to survive. It was the crew, each member of which had faced unimaginable hardship on their home planet. They had fought wars, survived natural disasters, and endured hardships that no alien species could fully comprehend. And they weren't willing to submit. The humans didn't fight like the Varkar or any other alien race. They fought with cunning, ingenuity, and an almost reckless disregard for their own safety. Instead of engaging in direct confrontation, the Elysium outwitted the Varkar fleet with guerrilla tactics and subversive warfare. They exploited every weakness, from the Varkar's overconfidence to their underestimation of human adaptability. They disrupted supply lines, crippled communication systems, and used their understanding of the Varkar's tactics against them. By the time the Varkar realized they had underestimated humanity, it was too late. The Varkar fleet was crippled, their leaders forced to retreat into the farthest reaches of the galaxy. The first victory for humanity on the galactic stage was not won by superior firepower, but by the sheer will to survive and outthink an enemy far stronger on paper. This victory didn't go unnoticed. Word of humanity's unexpected resilience spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Other species began to take notice, not just of their technological advancements, but of their ability to adapt, innovate, and fight back when the odds seemed insurmountable. What the Galactic Council had failed to grasp was that humanity had a secret weapon: their ability to turn their greatest weaknesses into their greatest strengths. The message was clear: humanity was not to be underestimated. As the months passed, humanity's reputation began to grow. More and more species began to challenge them, thinking they could subdue the fragile humans. Each time, they learned the same lesson. Underestimating humanity would be their undoing. The Varkar had made the first mistake. They wouldn't be the last. After their stunning victory over the Varkar, humanity's reputation began to spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. What had once been a small, divided species, confined to a single planet, had suddenly emerged as a force capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most brutal and advanced civilizations. The message was clear. Humanity was a species that could not be ignored, underestimated, or defeated easily. The Galactic Council, a collective of the galaxy's most powerful and ancient species, was thrown into disarray. In their arrogance, they had dismissed humanity as nothing more than a fledgling species. But the humans had defied all expectations. With the Elysium's victory over the Varkar, the Council was forced to take notice, though many still refused to acknowledge the true extent of humanity's potential. It wasn't long before a new, more dangerous wave of threats emerged, rival species seeking to test humanity's newfound strength. Among the first were the Craxians, a race of hive-minded warriors with a terrifyingly efficient military structure. The Craxians had conquered several worlds, and their colonies were expanding rapidly. They viewed humanity as nothing more than a nuisance to be extinguished quickly. In response, humanity took a decisive step. They formed the Terran Alliance, a coalition of the remaining human factions, pooling their resources, military strength, and political influence into a unified force. It was a bold move, as many of the factions still harbored deep-seated rivalries. Yet, the threat posed by the Craxians was too great, and the humans understood that only together could they hope to stand against such an overwhelming force. Under the leadership of the newly elected Terran Council, a charismatic leader named General Leah Morgan rose to prominence. A former military strategist from the war-ravaged city of New York, Leah was known for her unyielding determination and uncanny ability to see through the complexities of warfare. She had played a crucial role in humanity's victory over the Varkar, and now, she was tasked with leading the charge against the Craxians. In the early stages of the Terran Alliance's formation, the Craxians seemed unstoppable. Their massive war fleets advanced toward Earth with terrifying speed, their ruthless tactics showing no mercy. Humanity's military forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something no other species could match: their ingenuity. Instead of meeting the Craxians head-on, the Terran Alliance employed a strategy that no one expected. They knew the Craxians were used to overwhelming force and direct confrontation. So, humanity used their greatest strength, adaptation. Using their knowledge of Craxian hive mind psychology and military tactics, they devised a plan that would exploit the flaws in the Craxian strategy. The humans launched a series of surprise attacks against the Craxian supply lines, cutting them off from their reinforcements. They used their superior stealth technology to slip past the Craxian fleets, taking out key command structures and crippling their communication systems. The Craxians, who had believed their hive mind to be impenetrable, found themselves disoriented and scrambling. The turning point came when the Terran Alliance discovered a hidden weakness in the Craxian genetic structure. Using a combination of biological warfare and precision strikes, humanity was able to incapacitate the Craxian command leaders without a single shot being fired. The Craxian hive mind, once so powerful, collapsed in on itself, leaving the rest of their forces leaderless and in disarray. The Craxian fleet, now leaderless and confused, began to retreat, their numbers decimated by humanity's unexpected brilliance. The Terran Alliance had won yet again, but the Craxians were not the only threat lurking in the galaxy. With their victory over the Craxians, humanity had proven once more that their ability to adapt and overcome any challenge was unparalleled. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore the Terran Alliance, but some of the more powerful species began to worry. If humanity could bring down the Craxians, who had been feared across the galaxy, what else were they capable of? The Terran Alliance's influence began to grow as more and more species, some skeptical, others awestruck, began to consider alliances with humanity. The galaxy was slowly beginning to realize the truth. Humanity was not just another species, It was a force to be reckoned with. But this newfound strength came with its own dangers. The more powerful humanity became, the more enemies they attracted. And as the Terran Alliance expanded, their enemies grew ever more desperate. What started as a small band of humans fighting to survive had now become the deadliest species in the galaxy, and some of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations were beginning to see them as a threat. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were becoming the apex predator. And in the great cosmic hierarchy, there was no room for weakness. With the success of the Terran Alliance over the Craxians, humanity's stature among the stars skyrocketed. The former independent factions of Earth, once torn apart by divisions of politics, culture, and power, had now forged a singular identity. No longer just Earth survivors, humanity was becoming a dominating force in the galaxy. But such power always attracted those who sought to either subdue or control. Among the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy was the Andarath, a technologically superior species known for their telepathic abilities and their ruthless ambition to maintain their hegemony over star systems. The Andarath had long seen themselves as the ultimate rulers of the galaxy, holding dominion over countless worlds. The Terran Alliance, however, represented a threat to everything the Andarath had worked to control, and they couldn't ignore it any longer. Their leader, Grand Consul Tharash, had long watched humanity's rise from the shadows, dismissing them as an aberration, a species that would burn out as quickly as they had ignited. But after the fall of the Craxians, Tharash realized that humanity's adaptability and military ingenuity posed a serious risk to the Andarath's carefully constructed empire. Humanity, however, was not content to simply play defense. As the Terran Alliance grew in strength, they began expanding their territory, settling on new planets and creating trade routes across the galaxy. The Andarath had no choice but to act, and so they declared war on humanity. But this wasn't a war of traditional conquest. The Andarath believed that their telepathic powers were far superior to human intelligence. They didn't just want to defeat humanity, they wanted to break its spirit, to crush its will to fight. The Andarath launched a series of brutal psychic strikes against key Terran cities and military strongholds, causing widespread chaos. Entire populations were crippled with debilitating psychic attacks, leaving the humans reeling from the psychological assault. Yet, what the Andarath hadn't counted on was humanity's deep well of resilience. While the Andarath's telepathic powers were devastating to the unprepared, humanity's spirit was never so easily broken. The people of Earth, used to hardship, refused to yield to such a psychic onslaught. General Leah Morgan, now a symbol of humanity's indomitable will, rallied the Terran forces, even as the Andarath's psychic war took its toll. The humans quickly adapted to the threat, developing countermeasures that even the Andarath hadn't foreseen. They introduced technology that neutralized psychic attacks, creating psychic shields that rendered their telepathic powers ineffective in key military zones. But the most devastating weapon humanity had was their relentless adaptability. While the Andarath struck with their minds, humanity fought with sheer numbers, grit, and an unyielding desire to protect their newfound home among the stars. They learned to fight with a combination of brute force and technological innovation, creating specialized battle formations and war strategies that minimized the impact of Andarath telepathic strikes. But it wasn't just the technology that made the Terran forces dangerous, it was their refusal to ever give up. Even as the Andarath sought to break the human will, they underestimated the single-minded determination that had driven humanity for centuries. Every psychic strike that tried to break their spirit only served to fuel the fire inside them. Every loss was met with a fierce resolve to push forward, to adapt, to evolve, and strike back. The war reached its apex when the Andarath launched their final assault, a psychic wave so powerful that it threatened to cripple humanity's central command, the Terran Nexus. The Andarath believed that by severing the heart of the Terran Alliance, they would end the war once and for all. But the Terran forces had prepared a secret weapon, an AI-driven counterattack, designed not to repel the Andarath's psychic attack, but to redirect it. The AI, created by some of humanity's most brilliant minds, was able to hack into the Andarath's telepathic network, turning their own power against them. In a single, cataclysmic event, the Andarath's telepathic wave was shattered. The Andarath fleet, disoriented and vulnerable, was then overwhelmed by a final, all-out assault from the Terran military. Using their knowledge of Andarath tactics, humanity cut off their escape routes and forced them into a retreat. The Andarath, once thought to be invincible, were now reeling, their empire fractured and their power broken. In the aftermath of the war, humanity's victory was absolute. The Terran Alliance, now united under the banner of the Terran Empire, expanded its reach further into the galaxy. The Andarath, crippled by the defeat, could no longer challenge humanity's dominance. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate a species that refuses to quit. But even as humanity's light grew brighter in the galactic firmament, there were whispers in the dark corners of space, alliances being forged in secret, species plotting revenge. The war with the Andarath had proven humanity's strength, but it also showed them that no victory was ever final in the cutthroat world of galactic politics. The Terran Empire had become the dominant power in the galaxy, but the deadly path they had chosen had only just begun. And as their enemies licked their wounds and waited for another opportunity, humanity's greatest challenge was yet to come. Humanity's victory over the Andarath had sent ripples through the galaxy. The Terran Empire, now a rising power, basked in the glory of their triumph. But beneath the surface of celebration, the galaxy was restless. No sooner had the Andarath been defeated than a new and far more dangerous enemy began to stir in the galactic shadows. The Noxus, a name whispered with fear in the darkest corners of the galaxy. They were an ancient, elusive race, far older than humanity and most other species, and their reach spanned across galaxies, hidden from the prying eyes of even the most advanced civilizations. The Noxus were not a species of brute force. Rather, they were masters of manipulation, subterfuge, and psychological warfare. Unlike the Andarath, whose attacks were rooted in raw power, the Noxus thrived in the unseen, working from the shadows, weaving webs of deceit and betrayal, pulling strings behind the scenes to control the fate of entire civilizations. The Noxus had watched the rise of the Terran Empire with great interest. They had seen humanity's victories, their unyielding spirit, and their ability to bend the very fabric of warfare to their will. But what caught the attention of the Noxus was not humanity's strength, it was their potential. The Terrans were a new player, untapped, unpredictable. And in the eyes of the Noxus, this made them both a threat and a perfect tool for their own designs. The first signs of the Noxus were subtle. A planet in the outer rim of the galaxy, a world recently colonized by humans, suddenly went silent. Communications ceased, and any ships sent to investigate disappeared without a trace. Initial reports suggested a natural disaster, but the Terran Navy was unconvinced. The Terran Empire sent a fleet of ships to investigate, led by the seasoned Admiral Thomas Rain, one of humanity's greatest military minds. When the fleet arrived at the planet's coordinates, they found nothing. No signs of life, no remnants of a colony, just a dead world, its surface scarred by an unnatural stillness. It was as if the planet had been drained of its life force. But when Rain ordered a full investigation, they found something horrifying. The colony's inhabitants, all of them, had been converted into mindless husks. Their bodies were alive, but their consciousness had been erased, leaving them with only a hollow, soulless existence. The Noxus had made their move. In the dead of night, as the Terran fleet attempted to retreat, the Noxus made their presence known. Their ships, sleek and stealthy, appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the human fleet with chilling precision. The Noxus didn't fire weapons or engage in open conflict. They didn't need to. They attacked the mind. Using sophisticated psychic manipulation, they began to implant visions of despair, fear, and paranoia into the human fleet's officers. Crew members suddenly turned on one another, caught in fits of madness and hallucination. Ships began to fire upon one another as confusion spread like wildfire. And in the midst of this chaos, the Noxus did something even more insidious. They took control. Admiral Rain, himself a paragon of human resolve, was struck with overwhelming visions of the inevitable fall of humanity, each one more devastating than the last. His mind was bombarded with images of his people being wiped out, their colonies destroyed, their children lost forever. The Noxus fed on fear, and they were patient, waiting for the human will to break. But Admiral Rain's mind, unlike the Noxus prey, was not easily subdued. He was a product of the human spirit, forged in the heat of conflict and war. Despite the visions, despite the growing pressure, he clung to one undeniable truth: humanity had never surrendered. Not when the odds were against them, not when their world was burning, and not now. With great effort, Rain managed to rally the fleet, cutting through the Noxus's psychic influence. He ordered a full retreat, and through sheer force of will, he managed to break free of their mental grip. As the human fleet departed, the Noxus ships followed at a distance, leaving behind nothing but the terrifying sense of what they could do. They had revealed their power and their mastery over the minds of their enemies. But humanity was far from defeated. Admiral Rain's report back to the Terran Empire was clear. The Noxus were a threat unlike any other. They didn't rely on firepower or overwhelming force. They thrived on manipulation and fear. They were a species that played the long game, and they had no intention of allowing humanity's rise to continue unchecked. As the Terran Empire regrouped and strengthened its resolve, the Noxus began to weave their influence throughout the galaxy. They made subtle moves, sabotaging alliances, sowing discord, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They knew that if they could turn humanity against itself, they could break the Terran Empire without ever firing a shot. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive the Noxus. It was whether humanity could hold on to its unity in the face of such a pernicious enemy. The Noxus were a shadow, ever present, slipping through cracks in the minds of the galaxy's most powerful leaders, turning friends into foes. Humanity's greatest strength, their resilience, their unyielding drive to survive, was now their greatest vulnerability. The Noxus knew that if they could break the spirit of humanity, they would be the victors. But General Leah Morgan, who had led humanity through the Andarath War, knew this battle would be different. To defeat the Noxus, humanity would need to rely on more than their military power. They would need to unite not just as an empire, but as a collective will, one that could not be broken. The war with the Noxus had begun, and it would test humanity in ways they had never faced before. The enemy was not an army. They were a shadow, a poison that infected the very heart of humanity's resolve. And to overcome them, humanity would need to confront not just their enemies, but their own deepest fears. The Noxus had done what no other species had managed. They had struck at the very core of humanity's greatest strength, its spirit. The Terran Empire, so accustomed to facing challenges with brute force, now found itself entangled in a battle far more insidious. The Noxus didn't need armies or warships to crush their enemies. They waged war with whispers, with shadows, with the fear and confusion that crept into the minds of those who believed themselves invincible. It was a war of the mind, a psychological battleground where humanity's resilience was their only weapon. Admiral Rain's narrow escape had given humanity a moment to breathe, but it hadn't solved the underlying problem. The Noxus were everywhere. Their influence spread through every corner of the galaxy, twisting thoughts, creating divisions, and fanning the flames of paranoia. Planets that had once been allies now eyed each other warily, suspecting treachery in every glance. Colonies that had flourished under the Terran flag were now rife with dissent, as the Noxus expertly sowed distrust within the ranks. General Leah Morgan, still the heart of the Terran military, was acutely aware that they couldn't just fight the Noxus with conventional weapons. They had to change the way they thought, adapt to a kind of warfare that was foreign to their nature. They would need to use their minds as much as their technology, and perhaps more importantly, they would need to learn to trust each other more than ever before. Morgan convened a council of humanity's most brilliant minds, scientists, military strategists, and even philosophers. They needed to understand the Noxus. What made them tick? How could they defend against such an enemy who fought not with weapons, but with fear itself? The Council's first breakthrough came from Dr. Olivia Tan, a renowned neuroscientist who had studied human cognition under extreme duress. She hypothesized that the Noxus, with their mastery over psychic influence, relied on exploiting weaknesses in the human brain, emotions like fear, anxiety, and doubt. They couldn't control the mind of someone who was already confident in their resolve, someone who had learned to master their own emotions. And so, humanity's answer to the Noxus would be an entirely new kind of training, mental fortitude. Dr. Tan developed a revolutionary training program called MindForge, a method designed to strengthen the human psyche against psychic manipulation. It was not unlike the mental discipline of ancient monks who had practiced meditation to achieve mental clarity. The difference was that MindForge was a mental armamentarium, a way to turn the mind into a weapon. The program focused on several key aspects: control over fear, mastery of self-doubt, and the ability to think clearly even under the most intense psychological assault. It was no easy task. The first recruits were not soldiers but civilians, engineers, teachers, farmers, people from all walks of life. The training was grueling, pushing the limits of human endurance. But the results were undeniable. A select group of trained mindforgers began to show remarkable resistance to the Noxus's psychic attacks, able to retain clarity and control in the face of overwhelming fear. As the MindForge program expanded, it became clear that the future of humanity's war with the Noxus lay in this mental fortitude. Soldiers, diplomats, even children began training in the methods of mental resilience, transforming the Terran Empire into a collective of not just physical power, but psychological strength. But as the MindForge program spread, the Noxus responded with a brutal new strategy. They began targeting human leaders, infiltrating their minds in a far more subtle way. No longer content with mass panic, the Noxus started working their way into the minds of the Empire's highest officials, distorting their thoughts, twisting their decisions. One by one, humanity's leaders began to exhibit signs of strange behavior, irrational decisions, paranoia, and erratic actions. General Morgan was among the first to notice. As the Noxus adapted to humanity's new defenses, they began using tactics that weren't about breaking the human mind. They were about bending it slowly, distorting reality just enough to drive leaders to question everything. It wasn't the direct psychic assault they had used before. It was a war of suggestion, where even the most hardened mind could be made to doubt the loyalty of their closest allies. The tipping point came when a high-ranking officer, once a staunch ally of Morgan, suddenly betrayed her during a critical mission. The officer, Commander Darius Kellen, had been a product of the MindForge program, but in the midst of an important diplomatic negotiation, he began to act unpredictably. His decision to sabotage the peace talks resulted in a diplomatic disaster, and though the Terran forces were able to contain the fallout, it was a clear sign that the Noxus had infiltrated their ranks. It was then that Morgan realized the true nature of the Noxus threat. They weren't simply attacking individuals. They were attacking the fabric of humanity itself, sowing chaos by turning unity into mistrust. The most dangerous thing the Noxus could do was not destroy humanity, but make them destroy themselves. To counter this new threat, Morgan ordered an unprecedented operation, a counterattack against the Noxus's core. They would infiltrate the shadowy heart of their power, their psychic networks, and disrupt their ability to manipulate minds. But this would not be an easy task. It would require the best of the MindForge program to infiltrate the very nerve center of the Noxus and confront their leader, the elusive and dangerous Noxus High Mind, who had orchestrated the chaos from the shadows. But as humanity prepared for this final gambit, they realized something chilling. To defeat the Noxus, they would need to become something else entirely. They couldn't just fight fear, they would need to master it. And in doing so, they would need to become something beyond even the greatest weapon their enemies could imagine, a species who had learned to control not just their minds, but their deepest instincts. The Terran Empire had become a force unlike any other, ready to confront not just the physical enemy, but the darkness that lurked within themselves. Humanity's struggle against the Noxus had entered a new and more treacherous phase. The psychological warfare waged by the Noxus had reached unprecedented levels. The Terran Empire, once unified by strength and determination, now faced a deeper, more insidious enemy, one that preyed on the very essence of human nature: trust, unity, and confidence. But General Leah Morgan, with the Mindforge program, had begun to turn the tide. Now humanity had to face the next challenge: the battle within. The Mindforge training had done much to equip humanity with the mental resilience needed to withstand the Noxus's psychic attacks. But the real test had only just begun. The Noxus had adapted. Their new strategy wasn't direct manipulation or mass hysteria. It was far subtler, more dangerous. They were no longer simply attacking the minds of individuals. They were eroding the foundation of unity itself. The Noxus understood that humanity's greatest strength was their ability to come together, to fight as one. And so, they sought to destroy that very unity. As the war intensified, the Noxus began to infiltrate the ranks of the Terran military and government with a subtle form of mind control. It wasn't the kind of overt manipulation that left an obvious trace. It was the kind of influence that twisted thoughts and sowed division, eroding the trust between leaders, soldiers, and civilians. A once unified force now stood divided, with factions emerging within the Terran Empire, each questioning the loyalty of the other. The first signs of the Noxus's latest manipulation came when key military commanders began to question General Morgan's strategies. They saw cracks in her leadership, suggesting that she was becoming too aggressive, too driven by revenge against the Noxus. Doubts crept in, and whispers of mutiny began to spread within the ranks. Even the most loyal officers began to second-guess their orders, unsure whether their actions were truly in the best interest of the Empire, or if they had been coerced into doing the Noxus's bidding. This was the Noxus's most dangerous weapon. Not mind control, but the ability to make people question everything they thought they knew. They weren't just breaking individuals. They were breaking the collective will of humanity itself. General Morgan could feel it. The fracture in her empire was becoming more pronounced, and the weight of leadership grew heavier with each passing day. She had led humanity through so many wars, but this one was different. This was not a war fought with weapons or even tactics. It was a war fought with ideas, with beliefs. The enemy was not just a force on the battlefield. It was an enemy that lived within the hearts and minds of every Terran citizen. The situation came to a head when the Noxus, seeing their opportunity, struck in the most devastating way possible. A massive fleet of Noxus warships appeared on the edge of Terran space. It wasn't just a threat of military might. It was a calculated move, timed perfectly to exploit the internal division within the Empire. As the Terran fleet prepared for battle, key commanders hesitated. Some questioned whether it was the right time to engage. Others feared that a direct confrontation with the Noxus would only lead to more losses, further splitting the Empire apart. General Morgan knew that the only way to win this battle was to reclaim the unity that the Noxus had so carefully fractured. She needed to reforge the Terran Empire's resolve, to remind them of what they had fought for all these years. She knew that the enemy they faced wasn't just a fleet of warships. It was an idea, a corrosive influence that threatened to destroy everything humanity had built. In a bold move, Morgan ordered the launch of Operation Heartfire, a plan to address the divisions within the Empire head-on. The operation wasn't just a military strategy, it was a psychological one. The first step was to broadcast a message across every channel in the galaxy, a direct transmission to every human citizen, from the front lines to the farthest colonies. In that message, General Morgan spoke not as a military leader, but as a member of the human race, a person who understood the fear and doubt that now gripped them. She reminded them of their history, how humanity had once stood alone on a fragile planet, how they had fought and bled to rise above their limitations. She spoke of the strength that had carried them through the most impossible of odds, against the Craxians, the Andarath, and now the Noxus. She reminded them that they were not just an empire, they were people, and that together, they were unstoppable. Morgan's words had the desired effect. Across the galaxy, Terran citizens found a renewed sense of purpose, a renewed belief in themselves. The soldiers who had hesitated on the battlefield now fought with a fervor they hadn't felt in years. The civilians who had grown weary of the endless conflict now stood firm, united in their resolve. But the Noxus were not blind to this shift. They saw humanity's defiance, and they understood that if they were to succeed, they needed to break General Morgan's influence. They couldn't simply win by dividing humanity. They had to silence her, destroy her connection to the people she had inspired. The Noxus struck with everything they had. They launched a massive psychic assault on General Morgan herself, attempting to fracture her mind, to turn her into a puppet for their own designs. For the first time in the war, General Morgan found herself struggling against a force she couldn't fight with sheer willpower. The Noxus flooded her mind with horrific visions of her allies turning against her, of humanity succumbing to the darkness they had once fought so hard to overcome. The pressure was unbearable, and for a moment, she faltered. But it was in that moment of vulnerability that something profound happened. General Morgan realized that her strength had never been in her mind alone. It had always been in the people she led. It was the Terran people who had given her the strength to stand tall against impossible odds. And now, it was their collective will that would see her through. With newfound clarity, she turned the psychic assault back upon the Noxus, using their own tactics against them. She connected her mind with those of her fellow Mindforgers, creating a psychic barrier strong enough to withstand the Noxus's manipulation. As the Noxus's grip on her faltered, the unity she had sparked within her people became the ultimate weapon. The Noxus, seeing their most formidable weapon fail, withdrew into the shadows. Humanity had proven something that day. The most dangerous thing they could do was underestimate the power of their collective will. The battle within had been won, but the war was far from over. The Noxus, realizing that their plan to fracture humanity from within had faltered, retreated into the shadows. For the first time, the Terran Empire had held firm against their most insidious assault. General Leah Morgan's victory over the Noxus's psychological manipulation had proven that humanity's collective will was more resilient than even the most powerful psychic force in the galaxy. But the Noxus were not ones to retreat indefinitely. Their retreat was not a sign of weakness. It was the quiet before a storm. They had learned much from their encounters with humanity, and now they would strike in a way no one could anticipate. They would not rely on brute force or psychic domination. They would target something far more fundamental, the essence of humanity itself. They would strike at the heart of what made the Terran Empire truly dangerous, its capacity for adaptation. Humanity's ability to think outside the box, to evolve, to take what they learned from one battle and apply it to the next, had made them formidable. The Noxus knew this. They had underestimated it before. But they wouldn't make that mistake again. While General Morgan and her military leaders prepared for the next phase of the war, the Noxus had set in motion a plan so complex, so subtle, that it would take every ounce of humanity's ingenuity to unravel it. They had begun to infiltrate the very systems that allowed the Terran Empire to thrive, its communication networks, its military infrastructure, and even its very biology. The first sign of their new attack came when several high-ranking Mindforgers, the very individuals who had been trained to resist the Noxus's psychic manipulation, suddenly began to break down. At first, it seemed like a rare anomaly, a fluke. But soon, more and more Mindforgers began to experience terrifying lapses in their mental discipline, visions of horrific futures, overwhelming emotions of despair, and an uncontrollable urge to betray those they had once fought alongside. It wasn't the Noxus's psychic assault. They had adapted their attack to something far more insidious, a viral infection. The Noxus had developed a biotechnological weapon, an engineered virus that, when introduced into the human brain, could rewrite memories, emotions, and even the very essence of a person's identity. It was a weapon that attacked the mind at its deepest level, altering neural pathways and replacing human cognition with a version of reality that the Noxus controlled. The virus didn't simply infect the mind. It reshaped it, turning even the most loyal soldiers into agents of chaos. General Morgan was the first to recognize the true scope of the threat. It was not just a psychic attack. It was a biological one, a virus that could spread throughout the population, rewriting the minds of millions. Humanity was on the brink of losing everything they had fought for. Desperation set in. As the virus spread, the Terran military and government scrambled to find a solution. Scientists and doctors raced to develop an antidote, but the Noxus's biotechnological weapon was unlike anything they had encountered. It was a living thing, adapting to every countermeasure humanity threw at it, evolving faster than they could track. The virus was now part of the Noxus's larger strategy to dismantle humanity from the inside out. In the chaos that followed, Admiral Rain, the very leader who had led humanity's forces against the Andarath, fell victim to the virus. He became a shell of the man he once was, his once unshakable resolve shattered, replaced by an uncontrollable desire to destroy the Terran Empire. Rain was now a puppet, a tool in the hands of the Noxus, and the message was clear. No one, not even the strongest minds, were safe. Morgan knew that humanity had faced many trials, but this was something entirely new. The Noxus had learned from their mistakes. They had created a weapon that could not be fought with traditional means. To survive, humanity would have to evolve once more. The solution came when Dr. Olivia Tan, the neuroscientist who had developed the MindForge program, uncovered an unexpected flaw in the virus. The virus, though adaptive and deadly, was still bound by the biology of the human brain. It needed to manipulate the brain's natural processes in order to take control. The human mind, with all its complexity and adaptability, could still fight back, but only if the right neural pathways were activated. Dr. Tan devised a plan to hijack the virus itself. If humanity could introduce a countervirus, one that used the same principles of neural adaptation but rewrote the virus's code, they might be able to turn the tide. The catch was that this countervirus needed to be administered directly into the minds of the infected. It would require precision, coordination, and the willingness of the MindForgers to put their lives at risk, to link their minds with the infected and overwrite the damage done by the Noxus. General Morgan, having once again recognized the key to victory, made the fateful decision to act. The Terran Empire would risk everything in a final, desperate assault on the Noxus's core, a direct confrontation with their biological warfare facility. A team of elite MindForgers was assembled, led by Dr. Tan, with Morgan herself at the forefront. Together, they would infiltrate the Noxus's biotechnological complex, a labyrinthine structure hidden on the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Their mission was simple: release the countervirus and destroy the core of the Noxus's biological weapons. As they prepared for their mission, Morgan gave a final speech to her team. "We are not just fighting for ourselves," she said. "We are fighting for every human who believes in the strength of our collective will. We've faced death before, but we've never faced it like this. We are humanity, and no matter how much they try to break us, we will adapt. We will survive." With the Noxus's last, insidious weapon now threatening everything they had built, humanity's final stand was about to begin. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, one thing remained certain. The Noxus had underestimated the Terran Empire once more. The Terran Empire's fate hung by a thread. With Admiral Rain lost to the Noxus's viral weapon and entire sections of humanity's most elite soldiers now under the Noxus's control, the Empire had reached its most desperate hour. General Leah Morgan and Dr. Olivia Tan, with the best of humanity's MindForgers, now embarked on a mission that would determine the survival of the species. Their goal was nothing short of impossible: infiltrate the Noxus's biotechnological stronghold, unleash the countervirus, and destroy the core of the Noxus's biological weapons before it spread too far. As the team ventured deep into the heart of enemy territory, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their minds. This was not just a war against an enemy fleet. This was a battle for the very soul of humanity. The virus had already changed everything. As their forces had fractured, trust had become the most precious commodity, a commodity now slipping through their fingers. Every decision made in the days leading to this mission had been haunted by doubt. Could the virus truly be undone? Would the countervirus even work against something so malleable? More importantly, how many of them would make it out alive? The journey to the Noxus facility was brutal. The team fought through enemy lines, infiltrating the Noxus-controlled space with stealth and precision. Yet, every moment in enemy territory felt like walking on a knife's edge. The Noxus, having learned from humanity's resilience, had set traps everywhere. Drones that could detect a single stray thought, psychic sentinels lurking in the dark, ready to strike at any mind that wasn't perfectly disciplined. But Morgan's mind forgers had been trained to think, adapt, and outwit. They passed through enemy defenses like shadows, moving with purpose, determined to reach their target. Dr. Tan, meanwhile, worked feverishly to refine the counter-virus that would restore the infected. She knew the virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a living entity that adapted faster than anything humanity had encountered. Each step closer to the Noxus facility only made her more certain. Time was running out. The counter-virus needed to be precisely coded to fit the ever-evolving nature of the Noxus weapon. They couldn't afford a single mistake. A misstep could doom millions. At the heart of the Noxus facility, the truth became chillingly clear. The Noxus's true weapon wasn't just the virus. It was the mind of their leader, the High Mind. The Noxus's psychic ability to control minds had evolved far beyond anything humanity had anticipated. The virus was merely a vessel, a conduit for the true power behind the Noxus, the High Mind's consciousness, which had been using the virus to subvert and control human minds on a galactic scale. It was from here that all their attacks had originated. The Noxus had turned their very biology into a psychic weapon. And now, the High Mind itself had become the center of their power. Morgan realized that the battle they had been fighting was not just against a race of invaders. It was a battle against an intelligence beyond anything humanity could comprehend. The High Mind wasn't merely a leader. It was the living embodiment of the Noxus's entire way of existence. And to defeat it, they would have to destroy it entirely. As the team infiltrated deeper into the heart of the Noxus complex, they encountered resistance like never before. The Noxus were no longer just a fleet of warriors. They were a living, psychic entity whose very presence warped the space around them. Their attacks were brutal, immediate, psychic shockwaves that rattled the mind and sent soldiers into convulsions. The team was pushed to their limits, and casualties began to mount. Even with the Mind Forgers' rigorous training, they struggled to keep their composure under the constant barrage of psychic assaults. The final confrontation came when General Morgan and Dr. Tan reached the core of the Noxus facility. At the center of the room, encased in a crystalline cocoon of psychic energy, lay the High Mind, a grotesque amalgamation of organic matter and pure thought. Its essence sprawled across a vast network of synaptic pathways. It pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow as if the very fabric of space-time bent around it. To reach the core, Morgan and her team would have to penetrate this psychic fortress, navigate the High Mind's direct mental defenses, and administer the counter-virus. It was a suicide mission. But in that moment, General Morgan knew that the only way to save humanity was to destroy this nexus of control, to sever the Noxus's stranglehold once and for all. With her heart pounding, Morgan stepped forward.
"This is it," she said.
"For every life we've lost. For every person the Noxus has corrupted. We end it here." The team formed a circle around the High Mind's crystalline cocoon. Dr. Tan began the delicate process of programming the counter-virus, synchronizing the virus's coding with the Noxus's biology. It had to be perfect, or it wouldn't work. But as she worked, the High Mind stirred. Its consciousness reached out, probing their minds, searching for weakness. For the first time in the war, General Morgan felt herself truly at odds with an enemy. The High Mind was not just a commander, it was an entity of thought, a presence that reached into the very depths of their souls, testing their resolve. Each Mind Forger felt the pressure mount, each of them beginning to doubt, to question their mission, their lives, their purpose. The Noxus had perfected their weapon, but Morgan's training had taught her one thing: humanity was adaptable. And no matter how strong the High Mind's influence, they had one advantage the Noxus would never understand. It was the power of choice. With a final push of will, General Morgan focused on the task at hand, on the future they were fighting to preserve. She could feel the collective strength of the mind forgers around her, each of them pushing through their doubts and fears. Together, they fought against the pull of the High Mind's influence, each of them willing the virus into place. Dr. Tan released the countervirus. A wave of energy surged through the facility as the virus spread, rewriting the Noxus's code, severing the connection between the High Mind and its followers. The Noxus's psychic network shattered, and with it, their stranglehold on humanity. But the High Mind was not finished yet. It reached out one final time, trying to stop the countervirus with its last reserves of power. In the final, climactic moment, General Morgan made a choice to confront the High Mind, not with a weapon, but with the very core of what made humanity unique. She reached deep into herself, into every lesson learned from her people's resilience, their ability to grow, adapt, and survive. She struck at the heart of the High Mind with the one thing it could never control: human will. The High Mind screamed in psychic agony as its consciousness unraveled, its link to the Noxus severed. The virus completed its task, and the Noxus's grip on humanity disintegrated. The war was over.